Hi, this is Dan Spivey, also known as Waylen Mercy. You're about to hear a career interview with the Hannibal. You know what I mean?
This is Hannibal from the Hannibal TV.com, and I'm with WWE, WCW, and Japanese wrestling legend Danny Spivey, and we're at his home in Spring Hills, Florida. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, thank you.
To start this interview off, could you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what sports you played growing up?
Well, I'm the oldest of 5 children. Grew up in Citrus Park, Florida. I was real active in all sports: baseball, football, basketball. I was really loved baseball, but I was better at football, so I went to the University of Georgia on a football scholarship. I was recruited probably by 200 colleges around the United States.
And you ended up playing for Georgia, as you said, and I guess you were drafted by the New York Jets at one point?
Yes, I got hurt my junior year at Georgia, and I never ever really fully recovered, but the Jets went ahead and took a chance on me and drafted me. I wasn't there for long.
And we've heard you used to box a little bit, is that true?
No, not really. That's not true.
Was that just street fighting growing up?
There was a lot of street fighting, barroom fighting. I used to run with a pretty tough crowd, so you had to learn how to handle yourself or you wouldn't survive.
And you ended up meeting Dusty Rhodes, and I guess he convinced you to get into wrestling? Yeah,
I ran into Dusty at a country western bar one night and got to know him, and he asked me if I was interested in becoming a wrestler, and I told him sure. I was always interested in the sport, used to watch it all the time when I was a kid, and I enjoy entertaining.
So he actually trained you in the ring, or was it somebody else?
Actually, Dusty just gave me the opportunity. The person that helped me the most was Ricky Steamboat. When Dusty asked me if I wanted to become a wrestler, he was the booker in Tampa for Florida Championship Wrestling. And Dusty ended up moving and going to Charlotte and being the booker up there. So me and Scott Hall followed Dusty up to Charlotte, and we almost starved to death. But I hit it off with Ricky Steamboat, and Ricky Steamboat helped me the most out of any of the wrestlers.
What was Scott Hall like in those early days?
Scott was different. He was let's see. He was, he was Scott. It's hard to explain.
I guess in those days, that was before his demons took over, before he had the trouble in later years.
Yeah, when me and Scott were together, he never drank. He was never saw him out of control or anything like that. Didn't take pills. Didn't do anything. I mean, Scott was probably one of the biggest wrestlers in the business at that time, as far as muscular and being in shape.
And I guess the highlight of your time in Jim Crockett Promotions would have been facing Arn and Ole for the NWA tag titles.
Yeah, that was the start, and that was something I always remember.
And you ended up going to Central States after that, and I guess you had the Rockers' first ever match. Marty Jannetty recently did an interview with us, and he told us it was you and Scott Hall against Sean and Marty.
Yeah, it was. We went out to. That's kind of a funny story. Me and Scott had met Harley Race, and that was Harley Race's territory up in Kansas City, and we weren't being used in Charlotte, and me and Scott just wanted an opportunity to, get some ring exposure. So we decided to go to Kansas City. So we drove to Kansas City. We get there, and we went to the place where we were supposed to meet Harley. And when we got there, we were told Harley was in Japan. So there's a guy named Bob Geigel that was there, who evidently was Harley's partner, and he had no idea who we were. And so we drove from Charlotte to Kansas City, and it didn't look like we even had a job there, because Harley wasn't supposed to be back for another month. But anyway, Geigel turned out to be a pretty good guy, and he took us in, and Me and Scott traveled the roads. We drive 3,000 miles for like $200 a week. I mean, it was hard, and we paid our dues, that's for sure. And Shawn Michaels came in. Jannetty was already there, I believe, and we had matches with those two guys all over that territory, and you know, it was a good experience for all four of us.
And I guess you went from there to the WWE?
Yeah, like I said, I had, you know, a pretty good friendship with Ricky Steamboat, and Ricky went to George Scott, who was the booker there. There was a tag team of Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. They were called the U.S. Express, and Barry decided to go somewhere else, and so since I was a tall, blonde-headed guy, they decided to bring me in and be Mike Rotundo's partner as the American Express.
Did you have any experience knowing Mike Rotundo at all before from Florida or anywhere?
I had known Mike, you know, briefly. I met him in Charlotte for a while, and no, not really.
And you worked a lot with the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine. Any memories of those matches?
No, not really. I just always enjoyed working with those guys. They're two professionals, and we always had good matches with them.
You were part of the WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal with the football players. Was there any heat going into that match because the business was still a little protected back then, and were you guys at all worried that the football players might try and rough you up in the ring or anything?
No, actually it was the other way around. I think the football players were worried about us. There were several of the guys that ended up, they couldn't wrestle, they couldn't get into the ring because of their contracts. They were worried about them getting hurt. And we had Andre on our side, so they wouldn't have been very good for them.
Did you know Andre at all over the years?
Yes, I did, and it was always a pleasure to be around Andre. I worked with him as a tag team partner in Japan several times, and I always got along great with Andre. And I always remember that Andre was always kind to me, but he was a hard guy to get to know. He wasn't kind to a lot of people, so I felt honored.
And Dynamite Kid wrote a lot about you in his book, that you guys were very close. When did that friendship start?
Well, it started when I went up to the WWE, and me and Dynamite traveled the roads. I had a huge respect for Dynamite Kid. You know, he just recently died, and you know, there's a friend of mine named Gary Ports, Scotty wrestled with Scott McGee, and every time we get together, we tell Dynamite stories. Dynamite, pound for pound, he was awesome. He was a great performer. The guy gave his life actually to this business because he went out there and did some crazy stuff. He made everything look so realistic, and it was real. I have the utmost respect for Dynamite Kid. I love the guy, and he had a lot of guts. He didn't back down from anybody. He'd take anybody on, and I just can't say enough good things about Dynamite Kid. I miss him.
It's been a while since I read his book, but he wrote a story in his book that you let him house sit once, and I guess he OD'd or something. Do you have any recollection of that?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, he took something. I don't know what it was, but he started having seizures. At one point, stopped breathing. I ended up having to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and so the EMS came and took him to the hospital. And like I said earlier, Gary Ports came to the house, and I told Gary they needed to go get Dynamite out of the hospital because we didn't know if they were going to arrest him for what he was doing or whatever. But ended up, that was the last time I saw Dynamite Kid, was when he OD'd at my house. And Gary went to the hospital and snuck him out of the hospital and got him on a plane the next day, and he went back to England.
And I guess what you're most remembered for that time in WWE is probably your backstage fight with Adrian Adonis. Could you tell us what led to that altercation and what exactly happened there?
Adrian was given this new gimmick, you know, like I don't know, a gay wrestler or whatever, you know, and they were getting a big push to get ready to go with Hogan. And so they were feeding on Adrian underneath guys to work with, sort of like squash matches. And he was real stiff with the guys. He was really treating them bad as far as kicking them and cussing them in the ring. He was just being a total asshole. And I had a match with him, and he did the same shit with me. And it was in Toronto at the Gardens. And you know, I was so mad that everybody knew I was mad. Dynamite and Davey Boy got me after the match and rushed me out of the building before I could get to Adrian. So the next night, we're in Flint, Michigan, first time we've been in Flint, Michigan. And Adrian was supposed to work with George Steele. Well, George Steele became sick. So Pat Patterson was the agent, and he came to me and said, you have to work with Adrian. And I told Pat I didn't want to work with Adrian. And so he comes back a little bit later, he says, Adrian don't want to work with you, but Vince says y'all are working together. So I was real leery about the situation, and so I was prepared, you know, to go in there. I wasn't taking any crap off of him. And sure enough, he came to the ring, and he started his bullshit. He was real stiff with me, cussing me. He went to put the sleeper on me, and I knew he was going to try and choke me out. And I got out of it, and I came up, and I just started beating the shit out of him. And knocked him out in the ring, and I covered him. And the referee says, that's not the finish. I said, I changed the finish. Adrian's not going over, so disqualify me. So the guy disqualified me, the referee. And then we go back to the dressing room, and Adrian comes in, goes to leg dive me while everybody's holding me back from him. And I break a loose, and Adrian wasn't very talented as far as a boxer or anything, and he had no idea what my background was. And he ended up getting, I heard, over 200 stitches in his face. That's basically it.
Was there any reprimand for the fight at all by the office? Yeah,
the next day I had to call Vince. And so I called Vince. He says, Dan, I can't have you beating up my talent. And I said, Vince, he wasn't very talented. And he said, don't be a smart ass. He said, don't be beating up my talent. So that's it.
And what did you think of the Golden Boy gimmick that they gave you?
They never did anything with it. It was just a name that stuck because I had blonde hair and a tan, and so I guess Golden Boy they thought was fitting, but it wasn't something I was overly happy with.
And you wrestled a few matches with Outback Jack, and he has a bit of a reputation for not being a very good wrestler. How did you find him in the ring?
Horrible. That's just being honest. He wasn't very good.
Were you around for the ribs that Dynamite Kid was playing on him?
Well, there's a story behind that. The reason the guy got ribs so bad was that, when you ride with somebody and someone rents the car and the gas for trans and stuff, Outback Jack wouldn't give up any money. He says, well, you're working on top mate, so you can carry me or some shit like that. And Dynamite, you just didn't do that kind of shit to Dynamite without paying. It'd have been a lot easier if he got off his wallet and paid Dynamite some money for the trans and stuff. But instead, he got ribbed. Had it coming.
And I guess you left WWE around 1988, was it, or 87?
Yes.
And you went to Japan, All Japan?
Yeah. Luckily, I got let go. And I've been sitting home for a while, and I got a phone call from Terry Funk asking me if I'd be interested in going to Japan to work. I said, oh, hell yeah, I'd love to go over there. And Terry kind of helped me up there in WWE. We got to know each other pretty good, and he's still a close friend of mine today. And he says, calls me back, he says, Dan, I got you a job over there. I told them, well, they offer you $3,500, but I told them you were such a good kid, you wanted to show where your heart was. I told them you would come over for $3. And I wasn't really happy with that deal. I think Terry got the other $500, so. But, it all worked out. I had a great run over in Japan.
What did you think of teaming with Johnny Ace?
Johnny was real green when he came over. I had been there for a while, going back and forth, and it took Johnny a while to learn how to wrestle Japanese style.
And teaming with Stan Hansen.
Love working with Stan Hansen. You know, if you're with Stan, you're working on top. So I enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed the matches that me and Stan had with Doc and Terry. I love those two guys. They were great workers. We had great chemistry with them, and we had some awesome matches.
Who brought you into WCW when you came over there?
WCW.
It may have still been Crockett at that point.
That was a guy named Jim Hurd was running the place then, I think his name was. I think Ole was the booker. I'm not sure. And Dusty was involved for a while. I don't know, I just contacted them and told them I needed a job to work in between Japan. And they brought me in.
And how did you find it when you first arrived there, the backstage environment and how the company functioned?
It was different than working for the WWE, that's for sure. I mean, you know, when Vince wants something done, it got done. You know, Turner, when he was on the company, it was like, you know, if you wanted to do something, they had to get approvals from 6 or 7 different people. And that time, a couple months went by before you could do it. And that just took too long. And I don't know, it was just different.
How did you like being tag team partners with Sid?
It was good. It was good. I think that me and Sid really could have had something great, you know, if they'd ever gave us a push. But they never ever let us beat anybody. It was always a DQ or something, you know, just didn't give us the right push. And I think a lot of people feel that way.
Did you get along with him outside the ring as well?
Yeah, I got along with him.
Do you think, we've used him a lot over the years in our wrestling company in Canada, and he's always been pretty good to deal with and a nice guy. Where do you think that reputation stems from amongst some wrestlers? Do you think that's just jealousy, people spreading rumors, or?
Well, I don't even know what they say about it.
Some people say he's overrated or has an attitude, but we've never found that at all, so I don't know.
Well, Sid looks the part. He's got a great look, but as far as his wrestling skills, you know, he's a little bit limited. There's only so much he can do. I mean, the guy has a hard time even hitting the ropes, but as far as doing business, I don't know. I never heard anything bad about him. You know?
I don't know if you remember this match, but there's now a match that's a little bit famous on the internet of you and Sid against these two jobbers, and the one guy didn't seem like he was trained at all. Do you have any memories of that match at all?
Yeah, it was in Texas. The guy was getting up before I was on bumps. I mean, you know, we gave him a power move, and the guy was getting on, he wasn't selling. And so I got a little rough with him.
Yeah, I mean, you actually kept your cool fairly well compared to how badly he was.
The bad thing of that, I was just talking about it yesterday with somebody. The guy ran into Sid, knocked Sid down.
Yeah.
And that didn't look good for Sid.
And what surprised me was that was a taped show too, and the version they put on TV wasn't edited at all.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, like it shows all the screw-ups in that match.
It got worse for the guy when he got backstage.
Okay.
Yeah. The guy didn't need to, I don't know what the guy was trying to prove. I don't know. Yeah. He paid for it.
Now, how were your matches with the Road Warriors when you guys faced them? Those are two other bigger guys, not nearly as tall as you, but very muscular.
You know, we always had good matches with the guys. They were good to work with. I just wish that we could have beat them, or, you know, gave us some credit that we were a strong team too, but we never beat the Road Warriors, you know, so we never ever got to push.
And the Steiner brothers, they had a reputation of roughing up some of the undercard talent, but I'm going to assume that they were pretty easy to work with you guys.
I enjoyed working with the Steiner brothers. They were fun to work with. I've taken all their suplexes, and you know, they were fun to work with.
And when Sid got hurt, the future Undertaker, Mark Callis, was his replacement. What were your thoughts when they brought him in, and your impressions of him as a person and wrestler?
Well, at first, you know, Mark came in. He hasn't been around for very long. And, you know, I had Sid, when I got teamed with Sid just started too. So, you know, I could tell that Mark had a lot of talent. You know, it was just that he was green at the time. And got along great with Mark, and I think that Mark turned out to be probably the best big man to work in the business. Had the greatest gimmick. I loved his gimmick, and he knew how to work it.
Do you still talk to him ever? Or?
Yeah, I run into him every once in a while somewhere, and it's always pleasant to see him and have fond memories. And we were both good friends with Brian Adams. We used to play golf, the three of us together. And sometimes Big Show would join us, and we had a lot of fun playing golf with each other, four of us.
I guess living in this area, you're a big golfer.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Now, you had some matches with Lex Luger in WCW. How was he to work with?
I had some great matches with Lex, and I heard all these things bad about Lex, about he was hard to work with. We had a match together for some title in Arizona, I believe, and it was one of my better matches that I ever had with anybody. It was a good match, and I enjoyed working with him.
Is it true that you left WCW for the final time after refusing to do a job for Tom Zink?
That is true. There's a story behind that too. I mean, me and Stan were tag team champions in Japan. And the office knew it. The office was Dusty, my mentor, and I remember Mike Graham was the agent that came to me, and Tom Zink was a fill-in for Scott Steiner, and they came to me and wanted me to do the job, so I wasn't doing it. You know, nothing against Tom Zink. It was just the fact that, you know, me and Stan were tag team champions, and the office knew that, you know, we were working in Japan and knew that was our main source of income, and because we were working part-time for WCW, and I just didn't feel like it was good for my future to do that.
Now, this is going back in time a bit, but I understand that you were the guy that was scheduled to wrestle Bruiser Brody in Puerto Rico that night that he was murdered. Did you wrestle him at all before that, and what are your memories of that night? Because that has to be pretty crazy. Yeah,
we were in, I worked with him the night before he died, was murdered. It was quite interesting. I'd never met Brody before. I heard a lot of stories about him. And I went out, and it was a tag team match, me and Abdullah against him and Carlos Colon. I don't know what little town it was in. And I went out there, and I worked with him like I worked with anybody. And we ended up having a good match. Ended up rolling around on the floor outside the ring with him and stuff. And he says, we're going to make a lot of money in Japan. Now get the F out of here. So, you know, it was a DQ or something. And so I go back to the locker room, and the guy says, I can't believe you. I said, what are you talking about? He says, the guy said, nobody rolls around on the floor with Brody. And he said, what were you doing? I said, we were out there working. And so, you know, the next night it was a single match. And I was really looking forward to it. And I get the word that Brody had died in the dressing room, was stabbed to death. And so I got my stuff, and I went to the airport and went home.
Did you know any of the background at that point? Any reason why the stabbing?
No, I don't think anybody knows what happened as far as, you know, I heard that the two guys, Brody and the guy, I forget his name.
Jose Gonzalez and Vader.
Yeah, they rode together to the match the night before. They rode together there.
Yeah, because there's always, people seem to think that it was because Brody was stiffing him, but they were both baby faces at the time.
They were working together. I worked.
Yeah.
They were tag partners the night before.
Yeah. So I guess you never returned to Puerto Rico after that?
No.
Now, how did coming back to WWE in 1995, how did that whole situation arrive?
I don't know. I had met with Jerry Briscoe and Vince were down in Florida, Tampa, and they wanted to talk to me about bringing me in. And we came up with a character, the Waylen Mercy character. I'd never been a character, I've always been myself, and I was looking forward to it. And I enjoyed doing that character. I regret the fact that I wasn't in good health to finish the run with that. And you know, it's one of my biggest things that bothered me, that I didn't really make it with the time of doing it.
Is it true that it was based off of the Max Caddy character in Cape Fear?
Yes.
Did you have much say in the vignettes and the way that they introduced the character? Because it seems like there was months of vignettes before you arrived.
No, that was all me as far as the vignettes that we did. I just winged it, you know, and there were some pretty good ones that we made.
Any favorite matches from that run?
Me and Kevin Nash had some good matches together. I enjoyed working with him. That was basically it.
Any memories of your matches with Bret Hart?
I think me and Bret worked one time. I understand Bret was upset with me after the match. I heard he told the guys backstage I treated him like a job boy. And, you know, I just came back from Japan. I've been working over there for years, and it's a lot stiffer than the guys here in the States. And I guess I got carried away, and maybe I did bump him around too much.
So was it you that decided to leave after that run?
Yeah, I was hurt. I mean, 2 weeks after I quit, I had my hip replaced. And then 6 months later, I had a knee replacement. But looking back, I wished I'd have stuck it out longer and finished the run with that character.
And for a period of time before the WWE run, you worked for Herb Abrams, UWF off and on. Any memories of that?
No, that was a total joke. I mean, that was just a guy who was a fan that wanted to be a big shot and ended up spending a lot of money. And I just don't have much to say about it, really. I wasn't there that long. Wasn't around long either.
Is it true that you helped develop Bray Wyatt's character when you were hanging around the Performance Center?
Wyndham came to me and asked me if I mind him, you know, doing something like the Waylen Mercy character, and I told him no. And I think that, you know, we kicked around some ideas, and I talked to him for a while, but I think he's done a great job with it.
Would he be one of the guys from today's wrestling that would be one of the guys that you would watch if it was on MTV and you were flipping through the channels?
He's the only one I would watch.
What is your relationship like with WWE now? Because I understand you still work with them as part of their rehab program, or you have up to recently.
I really don't have a relationship with them. I really don't. I mean, I'm a part of their rehab program. A lot of the guys come to Florida for a rehab program, and I work with them and try and help them get sober. And but I really don't have any kind of relationship going with WWE.
Is that something that you do volunteer, or is that you get a compensation for that?
That's mostly a volunteer. That is a volunteer thing that I do. Not mostly, it is. It's something that's giving back to something that almost took my life, and I'm very sincere about helping people, and especially the boys, because it's affected us in so many different ways. We've had so many guys die from drugs and alcohol. I have to commend the WWE for all the money that they spend on our guys. I mean, it's the only corporation I ever heard of that, you know, helps guys that, you know, haven't worked for them in 20 years, or they were in developmental and never even got to the big show, you know, and Vince and the company helped those guys. And it's just awesome, because I would not have been able to send me to treatment, you know. I didn't have the funds then. And I just can't say enough good things about them doing what they do for the guys with drugs and alcohol problems.
I'm not sure what your issues were, and you don't have to be specific about it, but how did you conquer them, and what advice do you have for people that have similar issues that is affecting their lives in a negative way and they need to get over it?
You know, the person that, you know, if you have a drug and alcohol problem, you know, the first thing is admitting that you have one and asking for help. And, you know, when you get tired of being beat up, like I was willing to do anything to get sober. And hopefully you don't die before that happens. But, you know, if you need help, ask for it.
And what are some of your best lifts in the gym? Obviously, you're a very strong guy. Do you have any record bench presses or deadlifts or anything like that over the years?
No, I was never a heavy lifter. My arms are too long. It's too far to push the weight up on a bench. The guys with short arms do great on bench, but no, I just try to stay in shape.
I understand you were friends with Hulk Hogan at one point. Do you have any stories about him?
Me and Terry have never really been friends. We've been acquaintances. I remember before we were both in the business that he played, I believe the name of the band was Ruckus, and he played in some of the bars around Tampa. And when they were playing, I was the bouncer at some of these bars, and so that's how I kind of knew him before we got into business. Never really hung out with him. There was one time he came to, I was in Athens where I went to school, working a bar, and they came in there and played. So I ran into him a few times, you know, before the business.
Did you have any interactions with Randy Savage when you were working for WWE?
Yeah, me and Randy became friends after the fight with Adrian, because Randy hated Adrian. And when the fight happened and they broke it all up, Randy grabbed me and took me down to his private dressing room, got ice and put it on both my hands. My hands were all swollen. And we developed a friendship after that fight.
Is there any wrestlers that you've been close to over the years, other than Dynamite Kid, that you've mentioned a few times, that you traveled with or hung out with backstage?
One other guy named Gary Ports, Scott McGee, when we worked for the WWE. But no, I didn't hang with many guys. Me and Rotundo spent a lot of time on the road when I was there, and shoot, I traveled more with him for 2 years than I stayed with my wife, I think.
And you've been married actually 6 times now. I guess you're on your 6th wife.
I'm on number 6.
How old were you when you had your first wife?
Gosh, maybe 25, 24, something like that.
So there was a big succession of them.
In 5 years I was married, and in 20 years I was married 5 times.
And you've done very well for yourself after wrestling. You want to tell us a bit about what you've done after your wrestling career is over?
My family had a construction business, underground utility business. We had contracts with the Verizon Telephone down here in Tampa, you know, for over 32 years, doing underground utility work, putting in cable in the ground, conduit, manholes, all their outside plant work, construction work. And we also worked for Tampa Electric. And the business has been around for 32 years. After my dad passed and my mom became where she couldn't run the company, I came in and started running it. And we just recently sold 3 companies about a month ago. So now I'm retired and I play golf every day, train.
Any advice for professional wrestlers after they retire? Because a lot of them just waste their lives away after?
Man, it's tough. I mean, after you wrestle, you think, you know, it's going to last forever. It doesn't. I mean, I can remember when the old timers would tell me to save my money, kid. And I thought, what do you know, man? I mean, I'm making good money. And I'm just really fortunate that I had a family who had a business, and I had something to fall back into. I mean, it's tough for these guys, you know, wrestling for over 20 years or more, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It's just tough to be able to survive after that if you don't have some kind of plan.
And you mentioned you became friends with Terry Funk. Do you have any stories about Terry Funk?
Yeah, Terry got me with the greatest rib. After the fight with Adrian Adonis, Terry was friends with Sylvester Stallone. And Terry calls me and he says, Sylvester Stallone is looking for a white boxer. And I told him about you and he wants to meet you. And I said, oh, Terry, quit messing with me. You know, I didn't believe him. Then I get a phone call from this guy, and he says, this is so-and-so from Tiger Eye Productions. I work for Sylvester Stallone. We understand that you're coming to Las Vegas, and we would like to fly. No, we're working in L.A. He says, we understand you're coming to L.A. We would like to fly you over to Vegas to meet Stallone to talk about becoming a boxer. And so when I got to my hotel in LA, there was a ticket for me to fly to Las Vegas, and it was from Tiger Eye Production, was I guess his production company, or I thought it was. And so I fly to Vegas, I get out of the limo, and this guy comes out and says, Sylvester Stallone had to leave town, sorry he can't meet you. And then Terry was there working on a movie with Sylvester Stallone in Vegas, and to this day, I think it was a rib. Stallone never knew anything about me, and I just think Terry pulled a great rib on me.
And what was your favorite match from your time in Japan? You had so many great matches over there.
It was me and Stan against Doc and Terry. It was for the tag team tournament championship they have every year, and it was a 30-minute time limit, and we pushed it to where, this is a shoot, that it came down to 29 minutes and 58 seconds, and the belt was run. It was, you know, I forget, I think they went over or something like that, but to make the match that interesting, the time running out and everything, to be able to do everything we needed to do under 30 minutes, and it worked out beautiful.
When was your last match in Japan?
I believe it was the tag team tournament in December of '94.
Okay, so it's been quite a while since you've been over there.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember how many tours you did approximately?
No, man, a lot.
And Jim Cornette, I don't know if you know this, but he's talked about you on his podcast, and I obviously don't agree with this. I'm a fan of yours, but he said you were the drizzling shits and talked very negatively about you, and I'm wondering where that heat may have stemmed from.
It's funny that I just heard about that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I have no idea where that came from, but the guy that told me about it was my friend Gary Porch. And he was upset because he says, you know, out of all the years, I've never heard anybody say anything about you negative, you know, and this guy's just talking about you. And he asked me about it. I said, I don't even know Jim Cornette. I was around him when we first started in Charlotte, you know, and I have no idea what he's even talking about. I heard it was something that Ole was supposed to tell me to sell or something, and I refused to do it or something. I have no idea what he's talking about.
And this is a fan question, and the fan wanted to know, why do you think you were the only skyscraper that never has won a WWE championship?
Because I suck.
And another fan question is, who would win in a shoot fight, you or Sid?
Sid ain't got a chance.
He's apparently training in boxing now, but Yeah, obviously there's a difference in street fighting experience between
Hey,
you
the
guys.
guy can't even run the ring ropes. How is he going to be a boxer?
Did you ever have any other wrestler altercations with any name wrestlers other than the Adrian Adonis one that everyone knows about?
No, I had some ones in Japan, but you know, nothing backstage. It happened in the ring. You know, straightened out in the ring.
And what's your best street fighting advice, or fighting advice in general, since you have such a reputation? If someone gets attacked on the street or is in a situation where they have to defend themselves, do you have any general advice?
Yeah, don't get hit first.
I see. And what's your favorite movie a fan is asking you?
Cape Fear.
Cape Fear, really? Mm-hmm. So that character really was truly something that was perfectly suited for you.
I'm a huge John Wick fan and Jason Bourne fan, but Cape Fear was, I enjoyed that, and because I enjoyed that character.
What did you think of Kevin Nash in the second John Wick movie?
I thought he did good. You know, he did that really well.
Is there any reason why you never got into movies more?
I didn't ever have the opportunity. The big movie I was in was the Grunt movie.
Yeah, I remember that actually. That was when you were doing, what was it, the American Starship gimmicks?
Yeah, I was in Charlotte, yeah. The only person I knew was Adrian Street was there. That's the only wrestler there I knew. I didn't know any of the other guys. It was terrible.
I just interviewed Adrian Street actually. What did you think of him as a wrestler?
Well, I was talking to my friend yesterday. He told me Adrian looks great. He's like 78 years old and he's ripped, I heard.
Yeah, and he moved back to Wales, I guess, and he's training all the time. He's another guy that was known as someone you wouldn't want to mess with in the ring.
Oh yeah, I heard a lot of stories about him.
What do you think about the wrestlers of today overall? There's not really that many legitimate tough guys anymore, and it's a lot easier to get into the wrestling business and call yourself a wrestler now without paying any dues or...
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's changed. You know, I don't know if I could make it in business today because it looks like you have to be a gymnast, first of all. I mean, some of the stuff they do is awesome, but, you know, it doesn't make any sense half the time. I mean, you have to stab a guy, run him over with a truck, you know, shoot him a couple of times, and then beat him with a small package, you know. It's, you know, some of the stuff they do is awesome looking. I mean, the flips and all the moonsaults and all the stuff they do, I mean, it's crazy.
Would you ever consider being a manager? And if yes, I'm going to guess it might be for someone like Bray Wyatt.
That's the only thing I'd be interested in doing.
Interesting.
I can't believe they haven't done anything with that because, you know, that character that I did, Waylen Mercy, was only around a short time, and you wouldn't believe how people still respond to it and ask me questions all the time about it. And they ask about, are you going to do something with Bray Wyatt? I hear that all the time.
Would you have eventually got the tattoo on your head, actually tattooed on your head, if you'd done that character long enough?
I don't know about that. I thought about it, but yeah, I would do it as long as I knew there was some way to get rid of it after I was done, which I hear there is.
And there's a fan asking what you think of UK wrestling and if you ever wrestled over in the UK.
I went on a tour with the WWE over there, and I wasn't a big fan about some of the food over there, but I have no desire to go back.
Yeah, it's not the healthiest food in the world, is it?
No, it's not.
I think they even put gravy on pizza there.
That's terrible.
Did you keep a pretty strict diet over the years?
Off and on. The first time I went to Japan, and they booked me like 3 tours back to back, and I didn't learn how to eat over there. I went to all the fast food places and ate. I must have put on 60 pounds in 3 months. It was, but most of the time tried to stay in shape.
What were you at the heaviest in your career?
320, I think.
320. That's, I guess, towards the end of it.
Yeah.
Did you come up with the Waylen Mercy outfit, wrestling in pants and the shirt?
It was a joint venture type deal. You know, we kick things around, come up with it. The creative people that Vince had working for him.
Is it difficult to wrestle in pants, like long pants?
Those pants, nah, they were light.
Did you ever wrestle The Undertaker as Waylen Mercy?
No.
No. Would you have liked to have had that in the past? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would have actually functioned. That gimmick was actually tailor-made to face someone like The Undertaker, actually.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, that's too bad. Where else did you wrestle other than overseas? Like, is there anywhere we're missing? Just want to hit all the spots before we're through.
No, you covered them.
Did you ever work the Texas territory?
No.
No. You're lucky. You just made all the major ones, I guess.
Yeah.
You were a great heel. Do you have any advice for wrestlers watching this that want to be heels and actually be successful heels with real heat?
I think what made me a good heel was the fact that, you know, I knew a lot of people growing up that were really heels in life, and I just tried to copy them. And the meaner, nastier you are, the better heel you're going to be.
Were you ever attacked by fans back in the early days when a lot of fans took wrestling really seriously?
No, I just had fans spit on me and run, you know. It used to piss me off.
Did WCW ever contact you during the Nitro years about coming back?
No.
Did you ever, I guess you worked in Madison Square Garden quite a bit. Any memories of wrestling in that building?
Oh, well, that was pretty awesome to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. Not many people can say that. And yeah, that's why I liked working for Vince. You've worked in all the major arenas. I was talking to somebody the other day about the Boston Gardens, you know, when it was the old Gardens, and all the history that went on there. It was an honor to wrestle in the Gardens.
Now, for people with knee problems, I understand you've talked about it. You've had bad knees since, I guess, college days. Any tips on taking care of your knees as you get older?
Man, it's yeah, if you only have good knees, don't get knee sports. Don't do anything. I mean, it's going to happen, you know, whether it's now or later. If you stay involved in sports and contact, it's going to happen. It's just that they can fix you a lot faster now. I've had 6 hip replacements, 2 knee replacements, a neck fusion, and 14 concussions. Other than that, I'm good.
And those are concussions that you know about. I mean, we didn't even know what concussions were, probably.
I had no idea what they were.
And how do you afford all that? I guess you had benefits with the company that you were working for, all those operations?
Luckily, I had health insurance with my family's business, or I wouldn't have been able to afford having those done. I just had a knee replacement done 6 months ago, and the bill for that was over $100 grand.
Why do you think you never wrestled for New Japan?
Because I was busy working for the other company.
Yeah.
I never had always had a job with Baba.
What did you think of Baba as a person?
He was always good to me. He was a great promoter. He took good care of me.
What do you think about the wrestling scene over in Japan now? There's not nearly as many jobs for Americans as there used to be.
I have no idea what's going on over there. I hear Davey Boy Smith, Harry Smith is doing good. I try and keep up with him, and but I understand that there's not many Americans or gaijins working over there.
Yeah, he actually wrestles for our company up in Canada as well. What are your thoughts on him, Harry?
I haven't really seen him work, but from what I hear, he's doing great.
And he's been training a lot. He hasn't actually had any MMA matches yet, but he recently won a grappling tournament. He's been doing some submission wrestling, so
good for him.
He's keeping up in that type of stuff. And you said you don't really watch WWE. Have you heard about this new company opening up that's supposedly owned by a billionaire.
No.
No. Oh yeah. There's a new company. It's called All Elite Wrestling.
What's it called? All
Elite Wrestling. It's owned by the same guy that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Really?
And they just signed Chris Jericho. Their first event at the MGM Grand in Vegas sold out in seconds. They haven't announced a TV deal yet, but it looks like there might finally be some competition. I don't know if they're going to make a profit, but
they better have some money because it costs a lot of money.
Apparently they're signing people to 3 or 4 year deals. Cody Rhodes is one of the guys. He's one of the executives, I guess.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Do you know him at all? I guess since you were close to Dustin.
I know Dustin a little bit better than Cody. I don't really know Cody.
I guess Dustin's another success story, a guy that had some issues in the past and he appears to have conquered them, and now he's back in the ring.
Is he working?
He occasionally wrestles for WWE, and he's an agent back behind the scenes for them as well. Yeah. Did you ever have an actual match with him?
Actually, we did. We had one match.
What do you see for the future of wrestling? I know you don't follow it, but obviously it's much different than when you started.
Man, I have no idea. It's changed so much that I'm just lost. I just don't know. I mean, it's gotten to where people are doing all this crazy stuff. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know how much further they can go with it.
Do you follow any other sports?
Not really. I like watching, college football quite a bit.
Who's your team?
Georgia, of course.
Of course, yeah. Do you ever go to the games?
When we have reunions, I go back up.
Do you think you would have done MMA had it been around during your time after college?
Oh yeah, I wished I had a shot at that back in the day.
What do you think of a guy like Brock Lesnar that's making huge money in WWE and has a contract that apparently allows him to do MMA as well?
Good for him. I mean, I have no objections to the guy making money, man.
Yeah. And anything you want to say to the fans to wrap up this interview?
No, not really. I just appreciate all the fans, supporting Waylen Mercy and my career. It's been good. I love wrestling, and it was good to me.
Would you have expected Waylen Mercy to still be talked about as much today, which is about 20 years later or more?
It's crazy. I mean, that character was only around for like 9-10 months maybe, and people are just infatuated with it. I get mail all the time on that character. Lives are going to be in Waylen Mercy's hands. You know what I mean?
And you're still doing autograph conventions. I believe you're going to be around WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, I don't do too many of those, but I'm going up in April, I think it is. Is it April?
I believe it's April, New Jersey or something. Yeah.
So come see me if you're around.
We're going to put the information on the screen. I think it's called something at the Meadowlands that you're going to be at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's going to be Jim Ross is also going to be there, a bunch of legends. Yeah, so it's looking good. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us. You're one of my favorites, and I'm glad to see you're doing well, and we wish you continued success.
Thank you. It's been nice meeting you. Great interview.